Hi, I'm Chris from airwindows, and here's my latest plugin. And it is so new that I'm actually not entirely finished developing it. By the time you see it, it's going to have an output level and a dry wet, as so many of these plugins seem to need. This is called Air. And the reason I'm doing this one is it's helping me develop some other things that needed to use this technology. This is sort of a preview of the Kagi plugin Energy that has a scheduled release time for some time from now. But I figured I'd throw out Air, which is the precursor to it, and it'll help me develop some of the things that I'm doing with it so that I can, do the additional plugins I have in mind. So let's show what this is. I can turn it on. Doesn't really sound any different until I throw on one of these taps. That's a lot of brightness all of a sudden. Or we can use this 15K tap. Different tonality. Or even this 11K tap. Now, what you need to know about these is they're all running in parallel, so you can do combinations of them. And this filters queue kind of extends them into an unrealistic mode. Like I'll show you that. Let's show it on the 11K. If I crank this all the way up, it gets kind of insane, sort of bionic. And I can take it back up. And then we get a little more naturalness going on, if you want to call this natural. Because the thing I have to tell you is that this is a 44.1K plugin. These algorithms are based on the sample rate coming in. They don't actually, there's no way to scale them. Technically, the way they're working is there's one that's an algorithm operating on every other sample and sort of flipping around with that. And there's one, the 15K, is doing every third sample in a little cycle, and the 11K is a cycle of 4. And these are magnifying highs in this unusual way, where it can hype them out quite radically and then sort of tone things down again. Now, the idea I have with this, and the reason that it's a 44.1K plugin, it will still work at higher rates, but the area you're affecting is going to be scaled down to whatever the sample rate is. Like if you're at 88.2K, there will still be a 22K tap, but you'll be using this one to get it. Air is designed for operation at a given sample rate. And by the same token, if you're at 48K, you can still use it for that. It'll be labeled slightly differently, but maybe I can even fiddle with the labeling so that it'll, I don't know, show something more consistent with what you actually get. But the intention is for it to work at the 44K. And what you get is this unusual kind of sound where, let's give it a lot of 15. You can get this real sparkle going on. Or you can just crank everything. You'll notice there's a gap in here, and that's partly because of how the algorithm works. And of course we can change it around by doing different settings. It's a 15K minus the 22. and we'll sharpen it up a little bit just until it's obvious. Give it a little 11. So you can do weird things with this plugin. And I can turn it off. See what I mean? And I can also show you sort of old favorites here. Here's the Stealth Kit. You're going to get a lot of highs on this. Now this is not necessarily a nice high frequency boost. It's not exactly polite. It's sort of what you can do to do a sort of demented high frequency boost. Like here, let's add lots of 11 or lots of 22K. That made that the tambourine here sound very strange. Or I can do just all 22K. And that's sort of all supersonic stuff. You can even see it on the graph here. And of course, good old Alien Kittens. And we know what this one sounds like. But have you ever heard it sound like this? See, it says 11K tap, and by gosh, you're sure seeing an 11K boost there. That's what air is all about. It's this crazy tight boost, but you can pull it back. You're probably going to see that peak here narrow out. And sure enough. So we can use these things to dial in various ridiculous peaks and things, but it's in a way where, you know, this is not a linear phase EQ. And here's 22K, it's so steep you barely even see it. Or we can cut at 22K. Now I know better ways of doing this, and I should also mention you're not going to get a clean notch out of this, even at very high filter Q. For instance, you saw that the 11K boost, but if I duck it out, it's not actually going to make a notch. Instead, it will kind of make an inverse notch. And you can use these things to make a weird, over-exaggerated high-frequency peak that accentuates whatever percussive elements you want. And treat this like it's some kind of synthesizer, like it's some kind of weird thing that's bringing a strange, perhaps very unnatural tone, but is really good at dragging absurd amounts of highs out. And like I said, this is not a linear phase process, so it doesn't have pre-ring. What you're hearing at really high Q is a kind of post-ring. And that means it has a really sharp attack, and that can be useful for, you know, electronic percussive noises, such as this stuff. You know, these hi-hats. If you crank the filter Q out a lot and you want it to be up around 15K, pull it back enough to take some of that peak off. And then perhaps crank the 22K up some too. And you get a sampled hi-hat sound that really pokes out compared to what you had initially. But it still has the percussive attack that you want on something like that, rather than just a linear phase traditional EQ kind of thing which goes and this has a point on the front. So the idea is we can use this. Perhaps it'll be unusually useful for like EDM kind of stuff. It'll be useful for things where you're trying to take elements and put a real point on them, but have a clearly defined attack. The way that air works, it's good at generating that clearly defined attack. And because of the really peculiar behavior it has, I mean, I think I might even be able to demonstrate that. I have the fader pulled way down. That people actually wanted that from me, so that's fine. Let's take iron oxide, put it away for the moment, and pull up a test oscillator for the second. Now, because Air is such a peculiar little plugin, what you get is some strange results out of it. With even no filter cue, you get a nice clean boost at the 22K, but 50K has a bit of a peak and 11K a bit of a peak lower. Then when you crank out the filter cue, it starts getting kind of silly. And you have a really stupid peak at 22K if you want it, or you can see that the 15K, there's a notch down here too. And then 11K is even sillier. It really sounds resonant. It really sounds strange. And of course, if I back it out, like this is about as far as you can go for notching anything out. It's about 42, and that's as far of a notch as you can get. And that's with a very steep roll-off. There's other stuff that I have that's a lot better at these roll-offs. Air is not good at roll-offs. You should be using something else like an average or something like that. But an average doesn't give you this. Or this. Look at that notch. That's crazy stuff. Or this. Very silly response right there. And then we can kind of flatten it out a little bit to a still rather silly response. Or even goofier stuff like, look, I just ducked 7K for no particular reason. That's just how this combines. So you can create a lot of interesting high frequency strangenesses out of things like hi-hats or tambourines, anything like that, just by using this bizarre little plugin with the bizarre interactions on it. It might even be good to dial it in using things like this, the white noise, and just watching what you get. Because you can do some really silly, stupid stuff using it. And doing sound design for EDM music, this is like right up your alley. There's no reason you might not take some kind of hi-hat based off of white noise and suddenly go, whoop, just to make it sound different, just to make it sound weird. And normal EQs won't do this kind of horribleness. But, you know, so much the worse for normal EQs as far as I'm concerned. This sort of thing is quite a lot of fun, really. Here's a massive notch at 7K and then a huge boost. So yeah, Air is my new plugin, and it is a free audio unit in VST like all the other stuff since last year. If you like me developing strange things like this, please support the Patreon, and I'll keep doing it. Because that's pretty much what I've been doing for the last 10 years. I've gotten fairly good at it. And as long as I can explain what use any given thing is, people can probably find them useful. So I hope you like air. And if you don't, it's probably because you don't like horrible high frequency boosts. I think I've demonstrated how horrible these are, but good luck mimicking that with anybody else's EQ. You can't mimic these properly with a really crisp attack with anybody else's. It's just not going to happen. This is airwindows air. It is not normal, not remotely normal. Nobody else's EQ works like this because it's actually a really strange broken implementation and it doesn't work, but it does this. I really hope you enjoy it. I've enjoyed developing it and I'm going to see what more I can do with it. Thanks.